Hey guys, so for today's video, I wanted to go over all of my go-to favorite face makeup brushes. So I'm going to go over each makeup step and kind of start in order and tell you my favorite brush for that step. I kind of just wanted to make a whole video dedicated to my favorite face brushes because people ask me all the time. I am planning on doing this video for eyeshadow brushes very soon. I'm just kind of waiting for my Sigma brush set to be back in stock so I can talk more about that. But anyways, today we are talking all about face and base makeup brushes. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you would know that I have been a Sigma brush girly for years. I've been using the brushes for about 7-8 years, I want to say now. But this year I did try BK Beauty brushes for the first time and instantly I was hooked. So in this video we're going to be talking mostly about Sigma and BK Beauty brushes. And I do have a code with both of these brands. It's just Angela Bright to save you some money. So if you want to shop at Sigma or BK Beauty, you can use that code to save a little bit of money. And as always, I'm going to link all the brushes I'm talking about today down below so you can find exactly what you're looking for. So let's dive right in and start with my favorite foundation brush. This brush was such an easy pick for me. My go-to foundation brush has been the BK Beauty 101. So like I said, I just tried BK Beauty brushes for the first time this year, and as soon as I used this brush, I was hooked. I was hearing so many other influencers talk about this brush, and I was like, what could be so special about this foundation brush? But once I actually tried this brush for the first time, I totally understood, and I have not used anything else for foundation since. So what's nice about this brush that it has a nice angle to it. The bristles in the back are longer than the bristles in the front, which give you just a nice curve that really just hugs your face as you're applying foundation. With this brush, I like to do a mixture of patting motions, but also just kind of slight buffing motions with this brush. And one thing I've learned about BK Beauty brushes that I'll probably mention a few times in this video is that these brushes are so dang soft. Like, they're probably the softest brushes I have used, which is why they kind of quickly became a favorite for me. So while this is my favorite foundation brush for most of my face, I like something a little bit smaller for working around my eyebrows and around my nose, and my favorite brush for that is the BK Beauty 109. So the great thing about this brush is that it's literally just a smaller version of the 101. So they both have that same exact angled shape with the bristles in the back being a little bit longer than the front, but it's literally just a smaller version. So I find with this brush I can work around my eyebrows a little better, get a nice clean line there, and easier access around my nose or around my mouth. So maybe if you just have a smaller face or you like a smaller foundation brush, the 109 is amazing. And I also use this brush for some other steps throughout my makeup routine, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Now let's move on to under eye concealer. So I kind of have a few brushes I want to talk about for this step. So for a while, the Sigma Beauty F64 was my favorite brush for under eye concealer. I love the shape it has. It's nice and small, but does come to a slight point at the tip, so it does fit really nicely underneath your eyes. And I would use this brush for like an eye brightener, but also under eye concealer. But again, once I got my BK Beauty brushes, I was kind of hooked. So this one has kind of been replaced with the 110 from BK Beauty. Now these two brushes actually have a really similar shape. The BK Beauty one is just a little bit fluffier again and just slightly larger. But again, this one does fit really, really nicely under my eyes. And because it's fluffier, I think I prefer the finish that it gives my under eyes. And I do feel like this fluffier brush just gives more of an airbrush finish overall. Now another BK Beauty brush that I'm sure you've heard a lot of people talk about if you're familiar with the brand is the A506, which was in collaboration with Angie Hot and Flashy. So I use this brush a lot for under my eyes if I want to be a little bit more precise on where my concealer is. Maybe if I'm going for more of like a contoured kind of lifted look, I want to be more precise, I'll use this brush under my eyes. Now the cool thing about this brush is that again, it is kind of modeled after the 101 and 109. So all three of these brushes have that same exact kind of angled shape to them, but I love how long the bristles get on the very tip of this brush because it kind of fits like nicely underneath your lower lashes. So again, if you have smaller eyes, I think you would really like this brush. And I also use this brush for my eyeshadow primer because again, it just fits really nicely on top of my eyelid. So this is another must-have brush in my collection. I use it for my under eyes, on top of my eyelids, whether I'm putting concealer or eye primer. I also use this brush for blending out any spot concealer on my face. Like, it is just the perfect shape, and I think everyone needs this brush, honestly. Now, I did want to mention my favorite brush for spot concealing on my face, and again, that is the BK Beauty A505 brush. This is honestly just like your typical flat concealer brush. I feel like most brush lines do have this kind of brush in their collection. Sigma also has one that I use a lot, but I just like a flat brush like this to really pack on my concealer because I tend to use more of a thick cream concealer like the NARS Soft Matte Concealer for spot concealing. So I like a good dense flat brush like this to pack on my spot concealer, but then like I said, I do blend it out with that A506. Now for any kind of cream blush or cream bronzer or contour, again, again, my favorite brush is the 109. Like I said, I use this brush for a lot of different steps, and for me, this just fits perfectly around my cheekbone. And I do like this slightly smaller size to go around the perimeter of my face, around my cheekbones. Like this brush, it can do so much. But before this 109 brush came into my life, I was using and loving the Sigma F76 chiseled cheek brush. So this one does have a totally different shape than the 109. It's actually more rounder and it is really nice and fluffy. And what I love about this brush is that it works for cream and powder products. So again, this brush is kind of more on the smaller side, but I love that for being around my cheek and on my cheekbone. I do think this is a very versatile brush from Sigma. The next step in brushes I want to talk about are for under eye powder or just any kind of smaller powder brush where you want to be a little bit more precise and pinpointed. So for years, I love the Sigma F35. This is like one of their most popular brushes, I believe, and this one fits so beautifully under the eyes. It is nice and fluffy, has a nice little point to it. So I would use this brush to put powder under my eyes, on top of my eyelids. I've also used it for more of like a pinpoint blush, or if I'm kind of using more of a blush topper, for example, the Bare Minerals highlighting blushes I've been loving recently. And I'll use a smaller brush like this to really put the product exactly where I want. It's not gonna like fluff around everywhere. But I also like this brush for setting around my chin, my nose, kind of right above my brows if I'm just trying to set my T-zone and not necessarily my whole face. BK Beauty does have a brush that is a very similar shape to this, and that is their 108. The shape of these two brushes is almost exact. I would say the Sigma one is just a little bit longer and comes to a little bit more of a point, but they're gonna do the exact same thing. So these are both a great option for setting under the eyes or just any smaller areas of the face. But another brush I've really been liking for that step too is the BK Beauty 112. Now this is a small little fluffy angled brush, and normally you see this style of brush in more of like a big blush brush, but I like that this is nice and small. This brush is also very, very lightweight. So again, I use it for the same exact steps, setting under my eyes or on my eyelid. I've seen a couple people use this for blush, but for me, this seems a little too small for blush. Like it's just, it wouldn't cover a lot of surface area on my cheeks. But again, if maybe you have a smaller face with smaller features, this could be great for you. Now for setting my entire face, I like a big fluffy brush for this, whether I'm using a pressed powder or a loose powder, and my go-to brush has been the Sigma F24 all over powder brush. Like the name is exactly what I use it for. I like that this brush is nice and fluffy and big, but it's not too big because Sigma does have some brushes that are even bigger than this, but to me that's just like, that's too much, you know? So I like that this brush can cover a lot of surface area on my face and can apply my powder pretty quickly just because of how big and fluffy it is. Now let's talk about brushes for any powder blush or powder bronzer. Now for this, I tend to use the same brush for both steps. I just find it kind of makes my face look more cohesive if I use the same brush. But I have 3 brushes that I really like, and it kind of depends on the formula that I'm using too. So like I said earlier, I do like the Sigma F76. Again, this one does work for any cream and powder cheek products. Another brush I really like for my blush and bronzer is the Sigma F12. This is technically called their setting powder brush, but I think it's great for any cheek products because it's nice and fluffy. So if I'm using more of a pigmented blush or bronzer formula, I like this brush because it is fluffy and has some nice give to it, so it's not going to over pack on the product. And the nice thing about this brush is that it's really just a smaller version of the F24 like I talked about earlier for my all over powder. So I'll use this one for all over powder, and then this one for powder, blush, and bronzer. So you can definitely see they have a similar shape. This one is just smaller. Another brush that I use only for blush, not bronzer, is the BK Beauty Angie Hot and Flashy A507. Just in general, the Angie Hot and Flashy collection is amazing, and if you can buy it as the bundle, I say go for it. But I love the angle that this brush has, and it is just so soft and fluffy. And I like to use this blush if I'm kind of going more for like a blush draping look, or if I just want a lot of blush that day. I use this brush for my blush today, and what I like to do is actually go really close to under my eyes because the little longer bristles back here are gonna hit that area really nicely. So if I just wanna be super blushed, I go for this one. Now for highlighter, my favorite highlighting brush is the Sigma F03. This has been my favorite highlighting brush for years, and nothing has replaced it yet. Honestly, this brush is just the perfect shape for highlighting. It has a nice little tip to it that just nicely glides across your cheekbones. I use this every single time I wear highlighter. Also fits on the tip of my nose to highlight, right on the bridge, right on my cupid's bow. Like this just fits in any small area you need to highlight. So those are all of my current favorite face makeup brushes. Again, I'm gonna link them all down below for you, and the code AngelaBright will save you money at Sigma and BK Beauty. Like I said, I will be doing this type of video for eyeshadow brushes very soon, so stay tuned for that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.